The rain fell endlessly that night as Alice sat on the broken, wooden steps of her small house. The roof leaked so badly that the water dripped onto the floor inside, forming muddy puddles. Her clothes were damp and her body trembled from the cold. She looked at her mother, who was coughing heavily inside. The walls of their house were thin and cracked, and anyone who passed by could hear every sound of their suffering. Alice whispered to herself, "I wonder how long we must live like this. People laugh at us every day. They call our house a nest of sickness." Her mother forced a weak smile and said, "Do not listen to them, Alice. We may not have a fine house, but we still have each other." But even as her mother tried to comfort her, Alice could still remember the cruel words from earlier that day. On her way back from the village well, she had heard the voices of two women gossiping loudly. "That girl Alice and her family live in filth. No wonder people in the village are sick. They are the cause. Their rotten house breeds disease." Another woman replied, "Yes, we should keep our children away from her. Who knows what sickness she carries?" Alice had walked faster, trying to hold her tears, but their voices burned into her memory like fire. That night she could not stop thinking about it. She whispered to her mother again, "Mother, why do they hate us so much? We never hurt anyone." Her mother sighed. "They fear what they do not understand. They think poverty is a curse. But remember, Alice, you are not cursed. You are stronger than they know." Alice clenched her fists, but her voice shook. "I want to prove them wrong. I want to show them we are not what they say." Yet deep inside, she felt powerless. She had dreams of studying, of finding a way out, but every attempt to change their lives always ended in disappointment. Last month, a man had come to their door promising a small loan, if they paid him a fee first. He had spoken kindly. "Trust me, you will have money to fix this house and start a small shop." Alice and her mother had gathered the little savings they had and gave it to him. Days passed and the man never returned. It was another cruel trick. Alice remembered crying for nights after that betrayal. Her mother had told her to be strong, but her heart had hardened a little since then. The following morning, Alice walked to school wearing the same faded dress she had worn for 2 years. The children pointed at her as she entered the class. One boy sneered, "Look everyone, the disease girl has come. Do not sit near her, or you will catch it." Another girl added, "Her house is so ugly. I passed by yesterday and saw the broken roof. How can anyone live there? It must smell terrible inside." Alice forced herself to sit at the corner desk. She tried to focus on her books, but every laugh and whisper pierced her heart. After class, her teacher called her aside. "Alice, I have heard complaints from some parents. They are worried about you spreading illness." Alice's eyes widened. "I am not sick. My mother is weak, but we never spread anything. Please believe me." The teacher looked away with discomfort. "I want to believe you, child, but you know how the villagers are. Maybe it is better if you stay at home for a while." Alice felt her world collapse. Even the teacher she trusted doubted her. She walked home slowly, her vision blurred by tears. When she reached the small house, her mother was sitting by the doorway, her cough echoing through the air. Alice fell into her arms, crying. "They told me not to come back to school. They said I am dangerous." Her mother stroked her hair with trembling hands. "Oh, my child, this world is cruel, but you must not let them break you." Alice's voice was filled with despair. "How can I not break when every step I take is filled with their hatred?" Her mother whispered, "Then turn their hatred into fire. Let it burn inside you, not to destroy yourself, but to push you forward. Someday, Alice, they will see the truth." Alice closed her eyes and held on to her mother tightly. But inside, she promised herself one thing. She would endure every pain, every insult, and every betrayal. Because one day, she would rise from this misery. One day they would regret ever looking down on her. Days passed slowly, and each one seemed heavier than the last. Alice helped her mother gather firewood from the edge of the forest, their feet sinking into the mud as they walked barefoot. People they passed on the road turned their heads away or stepped aside, as if Alice carried a poison in her breath. A neighbor shouted from her yard, "Do not walk too close to my children. Alice, we do not want your sickness." Alice bit her lip so hard it almost bled. She wanted to scream that she was not infected, that she was just a girl trying to survive, but she stayed silent. Her mother squeezed her hand gently and whispered, "Endure, my child. The day will come when the truth will shine." At night, Alice often stared at the stars through the holes in the roof. She imagined living in a place where no one mocked her, a place where houses stood tall and bright, where she could laugh freely without fear of being rejected. But reality was cruel. Their food was never enough. Sometimes they ate only boiled potatoes with salt. Sometimes not even that. One evening, a group of boys came near their house. Alice was inside, helping her mother with a small lamp, when she heard voices outside. One boy shouted loudly, "This house should be torn down. It is a curse on our village." Another added, "If anyone gets sick again, we will tell the elders. It is because of Alice and her filthy home." They laughed and threw stones at the walls. Alice ran outside and shouted, "Stop it, please leave us alone." The boys only laughed harder. Look at her crying. Just like her mother, weak and dirty. Alice's mother tried to come out, but her cough bent her over. Alice shielded her with her body and screamed, "Go away." Finally, the boys grew bored and left. But their laughter echoed long after their footsteps faded. Alice hugged her mother tightly and whispered, "They will never let us live in peace." Her mother's voice was hoarse but firm. "Then you must learn, Alice. Life will not hand you kindness. You must carve your own path." Alice whispered, "How, mother? How can I carve anything when we have nothing?" Her mother touched her cheek with a trembling hand. "Start with your will. They can take food from our mouths, but they cannot take your will. Hold on to it." Alice lay awake that night, repeating those words to herself. "My will is mine. No one can steal it." But the very next day, fate tested her again. She went to the market, hoping to buy bread with the few coins she had. When she offered the money, the seller scowled and said, "I will not touch coins that come from your cursed hands. Take them away." The other buyers turned to stare, whispering and pointing. Alice felt her cheeks burn. She left the bread behind and walked away empty-handed, her stomach twisting with hunger and shame. As she walked home, the sky darkened above her. She looked up at the heavy clouds and whispered to herself, "Someday I will not walk away empty-handed. Someday they will choke on their laughter." Alice woke up to the sound of her mother coughing violently. The air inside their house was damp and smelled of mildew. She rushed to hold a cup of water to her mother's lips, but her mother pushed it away weakly. Her body trembled, and her voice was barely a whisper. "Alice, do not worry, I will be fine." Alice shook her head in fear. "No, mother, you are not fine. I can hear your lungs fighting for air. I must find medicine." Her mother looked at her with eyes filled with sadness. "Medicine costs money, and we have none. Do not waste your tears on what cannot be changed." But Alice could not accept that answer. She ran outside, determined to beg if she had to. She went door to door in the village. At the first house she knocked, and the owner opened the door only a little. When Alice explained about her mother, the woman stepped back with disgust. "You expect me to give you medicine when everyone says, your family brings sickness here. You are the reason children catch fevers. Get away from my door." The door slammed in Alice's face. She moved to another house and begged again. "Please, I will work for you. I will clean or carry water. Just a little help for my mother." The man sneered. "Work for me? You would only spread your filth to my home. Leave before I call the elders." Alice's knees weakened, but she forced herself to continue. At the third house she tried again, but the woman threw a bucket of dirty water at her feet and shouted, "You are cursed. Stay away." Soaked and shivering, Alice returned home empty-handed. Her mother looked at her with tired eyes and whispered, "I told you, child. They will not help us. We must rely on ourselves." Alice's voice cracked. "But how, mother? How can we survive if no one will give us a chance?" Her mother sighed. "One day, Alice, you will see that suffering shapes a heart stronger than iron. You will understand when the time comes." That night, Alice could not sleep. She sat by her mother's side, listening to every shallow breath, her heart filled with a mixture of fear and anger. She whispered to the darkness, "I will never forgive them. They pretend to be righteous while leaving us to rot. One day, I will rise above this mud, and they will bow their heads in shame." As dawn broke, Alice looked at the thin light entering through the cracks of their wall. She tightened her fists and whispered to herself again, "My will is mine. No one can steal it." The days grew colder, and the wind cut through the holes of their broken walls. Alice wrapped an old blanket around her mother, who had grown thinner and weaker. Each cough echoed like a painful drum inside the small house. Alice whispered, "I cannot watch you fade like this, mother. I will do anything to change our lives." Her mother placed a trembling hand on her cheek. "Do not lose yourself in despair. Alice, pain can harden a heart, but never let it turn to stone." Alice nodded, but inside her chest burned with rage. She remembered the laughter of the boys, the cruel faces at the market, the cold doors that slammed against her pleas. All of them stood in her memory, like scars that refused to fade. One afternoon, She went to the village square, hoping to find any small job. A man stood by a cart of grain and called out for help to carry sacks. Alice stepped forward and said, "I can do it, sir. I am strong enough." The man eyed her with disgust. "You again? People say your house is cursed. If I let you touch my grain, no one will buy it. Get away from here." The crowd gathered and murmured, some pointing at Alice and laughing. She felt her throat tighten, but forced her voice to remain steady. "Please, I only want to work. I will take any payment, even food." The man picked up a handful of dust and threw it toward her. His voice rose. "Leave, girl. You bring sickness to this village." The crowd laughed loudly as Alice stood frozen, the dust clinging to her hair and face. Her heart ached, but she lifted her chin and whispered to herself, "You will not break me." As she walked away, she heard the voices of the villagers behind her. She should leave this place forever. She is nothing but shame. Alice returned home with empty hands once again. She sat beside her mother and tried to hide her tears, but her mother noticed. "Child, do not hide your pain. Let it flow so you can rise again tomorrow." Alice's voice cracked. "I feel like tomorrow never brings anything but cruelty." Her mother squeezed her hand and whispered, "Tomorrow is built by what you endure today. Remember that, Alice." That night, Alice lay awake staring at the broken roof. The stars above seemed so far, yet she imagined them as promises of another life. She whispered to herself, "Someday I will rise. Someday their cruelty will return to them." One morning, Alice decided she could not remain in silence anymore. She walked to the edge of the village, where the elders gathered to discuss community matters. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself forward. The oldest man in the circle looked up as she approached. "What brings you here, girl?" he asked in a stern tone. Alice bowed her head and spoke with trembling words. "I come to ask for a chance. Please allow me to work for the village. I can clean, carry, or help in any way. My mother is ill and we have nothing left." Murmurs rose among the elders. One of them shook his head. "She is the child from the broken house. People say her family spreads disease." Another elder added, "If we let her touch our work, soon our children will fall sick. We cannot risk it." Alice lifted her eyes, filled with tears, but also determination. "I am not cursed. We are only poor. Poverty is not a sickness. Please believe me." The oldest man leaned back with a sigh. "Your words are bold, but the fears of the villagers are stronger. You must leave." Alice felt her chest tighten, as if a heavy stone pressed against it. She wanted to shout, to scream at them for their blind cruelty, but she knew it would only make them hate her more. She turned and walked away with slow steps, the whispers of the elders chasing her like shadows. On the path home, she met a merchant who had once promised her family help. He smiled at her with false kindness. "Alice, you still live in that broken hut. I remember your mother gave me coins to start a small trade. Do not worry, someday I will return them." Alice's eyes burned with fury. "You stole from us. Because of you, we have nothing left." The merchant laughed lightly. "Stolen. That is a harsh word. It was simply bad luck in business. Perhaps you should learn that the world does not reward the weak." He walked away, leaving Alice trembling with rage. She whispered to herself, "One day I will make them taste the pain they gave us." When she reached home, her mother looked at her weary face and asked, "What happened, child?" Alice knelt beside her mother and held her frail hands. "They will not help us. They never will. We are alone." Her mother's voice was soft but firm. "Then alone we must survive. Do not give them the victory of breaking your spirit." Alice nodded, but deep inside she felt a fire growing stronger, a fire no cruelty could extinguish. Winter winds arrived and the cold crept into every corner of their fragile house. Alice used old cloth to cover the cracks in the walls, but the air still slipped through, chilling her mother's bones. Each cough sounded sharper, more painful. Alice whispered to herself, "I must find a way. If not food, then at least wood for warmth." She went into the forest with a small basket. Her hands grew red from the cold as she picked fallen branches. Suddenly she heard footsteps behind her. When she turned, she saw 3 villagers, young men with cruel smiles. One of them said, "So the cursed girl comes to steal from the forest again." Alice's voice shook. "This forest belongs to all. I only take what is already fallen." Another man laughed. "Do not pretend to be noble. Everyone knows your family carries death. We should chase you out." They stepped closer, circling her. Alice clutched her basket tightly and said, "Please, I only want to help my mother." The tallest of them sneered. "Maybe your mother is sick because of your own filth. You are better gone." Alice's chest tightened with fear, but she stood firm. She looked at each of them and said, "I will not leave. This forest is not yours to guard." For a moment they looked surprised at her defiance. Then one of them pushed her shoulder hard. She stumbled but did not fall. She picked up the basket and whispered, "I will endure this." They laughed and finally walked away, leaving her shaking. Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to continue gathering wood. When she returned home, her mother was waiting with worried eyes. Alice tried to smile and said, "I brought wood. We will be warm tonight." Her mother touched her face gently. "Child, your eyes tell me more than your words. You faced cruelty again." Alice lowered her head. "Yes, mother, but I will not give them my tears anymore. I will give them my strength instead." Her mother coughed, but her voice carried pride. "That is the spirit I wished to see. Even in darkness, you must keep the flame alive." That night, Alice lit the fire and sat beside her mother. She whispered to herself, "Someday I will no longer gather scraps while others laugh. Someday I will hold more than ashes in my hands." The days of winter stretched endlessly, and food grew scarcer. Alice often gave her portion to her mother, pretending she was not hungry. At night, her stomach ached, but she forced a smile so her mother would not worry. One morning, Alice decided to try the market again. She carried a few handmade baskets she had woven from old reeds, hoping someone would buy them. She walked with cautious hope in her heart. At the market, she laid the baskets on the ground and called out softly, "Baskets for sale. Please take a look." People passed by without stopping. Some turned their faces away. Others covered their mouths, as if afraid to breathe the same air. A group of women stopped only to mock her. "Look at this girl who dares to sell. Who would buy from her? She carries sickness in her hands." Another laughed. "Her baskets must be cursed too. Anyone who touches them will fall ill." Alice swallowed her pain and tried again. "Please, they are strong baskets. I worked all night to make them. Just 1 coin is enough." But the crowd only laughed louder. One man finally kicked the baskets, scattering them across the dirt. He shouted, "Take your cursed work away before we burn it." Alice bent to gather the baskets, her fingers trembling. She whispered to herself, "Stay calm. Do not let them see your tears." As she turned to leave, an old woman approached her quietly. Unlike the others, her eyes were soft. She picked up one basket and examined it. "This is well made," she said gently. "I will take it." Alice's heart leapt with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. The woman gave her a small coin and added, "Do not listen to their cruelty, child. Pain can crush, or it can shape. Choose wisely." Alice held the coin tightly, as if it were gold. She bowed deeply and said, "I will remember your kindness." When she returned home, she showed her mother the coin. Her mother's eyes filled with tears of pride. "You see, Alice, not all hearts are blind. Hold on to this moment." Alice smiled faintly, but inside she thought, "One kind heart among 100 cruel ones. That is enough to keep my fire alive." That night she whispered into the darkness, "Someday I will no longer beg for coins. Someday they will beg for mercy." Spring finally arrived, melting the snow and filling the fields with green again. Yet for Alice and her mother, nothing truly changed. Their house still leaned like it would collapse, and her mother's cough still haunted every night. Alice decided she must search beyond the village. She walked to the nearby town with determination in her heart. The journey was long, her shoes worn thin, but she refused to stop. When she arrived, she was stunned by the sight of tall houses, colorful markets, and people dressed in fine clothes. For a moment, she felt invisible among them. A ragged girl, with nothing but hope in her hands. She approached a shopkeeper and said, "Sir, I can work for you. I can sweep, carry goods, anything you need." The man looked her up and down. "Where are you from, girl?" Alice lowered her head from the small village nearby. At once his expression hardened. "That cursed village, I have heard rumors of sickness there. You must be one of them. Leave before my customers see you." Alice's heart sank. Even here the rumors followed her. She tried another place, then another, but each time the answer was the same. They had all heard the lies that her family spread disease. By the end of the day, she sat on a stone by the road, exhausted and empty. She whispered to herself, "Is there no place in this world where I am not hated?" A kind voice interrupted her thoughts. A traveler passing by stopped and looked at her with concern. "You look tired, child. Why do you sit here alone?" Alice hesitated, then spoke with trembling words. "My mother is ill, and we have nothing. Everyone believes lies about us. No one will give me work." The traveler sighed deeply. "The world is often cruel to those who have least. But remember, suffering can forge strength if you do not let it destroy you. He placed a small piece of bread in her hands. Eat this, and do not give up. Alice felt tears sting her eyes. She bowed her head. Thank you. When she returned home, she shared the bread with her mother. Her mother touched her cheek and said, "Even the smallest kindness shines, brighter than 1,000 insults." Alice nodded, but in her heart the fire grew stronger. She whispered in the night, "Someday I will not survive on scraps. Someday I will rise so high they can never touch me again." The weeks that followed brought more trials. Alice woke early each morning, walking to the fields in hope of finding work. Yet the farmers always waved her away. They whispered that her hands carried sickness, that her shadow would poison their crops. One day, she overheard two farmers talking as she passed. "That girl should not even be here. If we let her near the harvest, it will rot. She and her family are a curse upon this land." Alice clenched her fists but kept walking. Their words cut her deeper than any blade. She thought of her mother, waiting at home with an empty bowl, and her heart ached with helplessness. That evening, she sat by the river, staring at her reflection in the dark water. Her face looked thin and pale, her eyes hollow from hunger. She whispered to herself, "Is this all I will ever be? A shadow mocked and rejected." The water rippled, as if answering her pain. She dipped her hands in and whispered again, "One day this reflection will not be a poor girl. One day it will be someone stronger." When she returned home, her mother was sitting quietly by the fire. Alice knelt beside her and said, "I tried again today. They would not let me near." Her mother stroked her hair with trembling fingers. "Child, you must understand. People are afraid of what they do not know. But fear cannot rule your path forever." Alice's voice cracked. "Then what must I do, mother? I cannot watch you fade while I am powerless." Her mother looked in too, her eyes with fierce determination. "You must endure until your chance arrives. Every insult, every rejection is sharpening you. Do not forget that." Alice held her mother's hand tightly. "I will not forget. I will carry every wound as a weapon." The following morning, as she walked through the village, a group of children began to throw stones. One struck her shoulder and another hit her leg. They shouted, "Go away, disease girl. Leave our village." Alice picked up the stones silently and placed them in her basket. The children stared at her in confusion. She whispered coldly, "Someday I will return these to you, not as stones, but as memories you cannot escape." She walked away without looking back. Inside her chest, the fire burned brighter than ever. No longer only pain, but also resolve. Years passed, and Alice carried every wound, every insult, deep inside her heart. She worked wherever she could, even if it meant walking to far towns, taking the hardest labor, or enduring the harshest words. Slowly she learned skills, weaving better baskets, sewing clothes, and even writing letters for merchants who could not write themselves. Her mother's health grew weaker with each season, but she lived long enough to see Alice stand tall, no longer trembling before the cruelty of others. One evening as the sun set, her mother whispered, "You have grown strong, my child, stronger than I ever imagined. Do not let this strength fade when I am gone." Alice held her mother tightly and promised, "I will carry your words forever." When her mother finally closed her eyes for the last time, Alice's tears fell endlessly. Yet behind her, grief was a vow stronger than steel. She buried her mother with her own hands. No villagers came to help, but Alice whispered at the grave, "One day they will see what you saw in me." She left the broken house and went to the city. Life there was brutal, but she no longer bent under cruelty. She fought for every chance, every coin, every skill. She endured hunger, cold, and betrayal, but she never let go of her will. Over the years, Alice rose. She became known for her craft, her strength, and her determination. Her baskets and clothing reached markets across towns, and people began to speak her name with respect instead of scorn. What once had been laughter turned into silence, then into awe. One day she returned to her village, no longer as the cursed girl, but as a woman dressed with dignity, her work carried by traders who spoke highly of her. The villagers watched in silence as she walked through the square. Children who once threw stones now hid behind their parents, ashamed. The elders lowered their eyes, unable to meet her gaze. Alice stopped in the center of the village and looked at them all. Her voice was calm, yet unshakable. "I was once the girl you despised. You called me disease. You mocked my home. You left my mother to suffer alone. Today I stand before you, not as your curse, but as proof that your cruelty could not break me." Silence filled the air. No one dared to laugh. Alice turned and walked away. leaving them with the weight of their own shame. In her heart she whispered, "Mother, I endured, I rose, and now the world will remember me, not for their lies, but for my strength."